Hello everyone. Let us look at a table and a matrix. We'll first make a new page. Let's call this the table and the matrix. So we have two different options. A table is like a Excel sheet and a matrix is like a pivot table. So in a table, the only option we have is to put columns. For example, if I keep sales and I keep the subcategory, then it comes like this, as we would expect. Let me add a border and shadow as well. There we go. But if you want to make something resembling a pivot table, then we can convert this into a matrix. And now you notice we have the subcategory in the rows. We have the market in the columns, and it looks like this. We can also add a heat map here. So I can now go to Format, select Cell Elements, and then very similar to Excel, we have background color, font color, data bar, and icons. So I can add a background color, font color, data bars like this, icons, very similar to Excel. Of course, you have the FX button if you want to customize the colors as well. For example, maybe I want to keep the colors from a gray to a dark gray so that it looks very clean like this. If you want to hide the numbers, you can just make the font color active as well. Again, with the same gray and black, so that will also come perfectly. Let me try to recreate that. Something like this. Okay, now similar to a pivot table, we can also keep multiple levels in the rows. For example, if I keep my category above the subcategory, you will notice we get the plus sign, exactly like a pivot table. So now there are two options that you have. You can either click on the plus sign here, or you can also expand like this. Completely up to you. There are, of course, many other formatting options in the tables, and I would urge you all to spend some time and then go through all of these. Most of these are fairly straightforward, and you will understand them if you try. But you have to give it time. You know, sometimes there are these very small things that are not easy to understand. For example, there is an option here, which is the plus minus icons, which is in the row headers. You notice it allows me to remove the plus and the minus icon. For some reason, if you want to disable it. Below that, we also have the stepped layout. If you turn it off, then the category subcategory comes in two columns. Similar to how we have a tabular view in an Excel pivot table, here we have a stepped layout on and off. So that's exactly my point. Many of these things you will not know exist on the matrix in Power BI because we don't know what we don't know, right? And that's why it's very important when you're still in the learning phase to keep on experimenting and exploring every single option you have. Because in the future, when you actually have to work on these things, these are the additional skills that you have, which will really help you have a USP. Let's make one more. In this, I want to show you a spark line. Right? Let's only keep my first table. All right. Now here we have in the sparkline, we can go to insert and we can create a sparkline very similar to Excel. In the sparkline, my y-axis, think about what it would be. It has to be a number, right? So I will select my sales value and it would be the sum. In my x-axis, I will keep my month, for example. And now you notice it gives me a small sparkline like this. It looks very nice. In the format, when I go to sparklines, I can also change it from a line to a column like this. And of course, you can change the colors as well. And the width if you want to. Then you also have markers. So in the marker as well, you can have every point highlighted or maybe only the highest and the lowest point like this. So again, if you notice, I'm keeping a green color right? And I'm keeping a red color. I'm not sure if we can have different colors for the high and low. Maybe that's something that you can try on your own. The final option that we have in a table is something very interesting. Let me first remove the sparklines. Now imagine I've kept the sales and the profit and maybe the number of customers as well. So we'll change it to the distinct count like this. So when I click on these three dots, there's an option called automatically find clusters. Now clusters are something that we typically learn in machine learning. So it's a little funny that the option is available here. I will be covering it again when we do scatter charts, but let's see how it works. When I go to automatically find clusters, I can either choose auto or I can say that I want to see 3 clusters, for example. And what it does is it now shows me that out of these 17 subcategories, how many are in cluster 1 and cluster 2 and cluster 3. Now, what do the clusters even mean? The clusters here signifies that all of the values that are in cluster 1, these are all homogeneous. That means they're exhibiting similar characteristics, which usually would mean that the sales are high and the profit is high as well. On the other hand, when you go to cluster 3, it exhibits again a homogeneous characteristic, which means that all the cluster 3 subcategories are similar to each other, right? I will not get into detail here. If you really want to do clusters with much more control, it is better to use something like Python, but it's handy to have it. Please make sure to do this once with your own data as well, if you have any, because that way you can understand better whether the clusters are really helping you or not. It's more of an art than a science. So don't ask me what would be the perfect number of clusters. You have to give it a little bit of a go to try and see how it works. But if you want a little bit of idea for further reading, I would strongly suggest all of you to read about k-means versus KNN. These are two of the most common machine learning techniques. KNN is k nearest neighbor, and then k-means clustering is a different format. So one of them is unsupervised, the other is supervised. And I would really suggest that you can spend a little bit of time reading about it. It would definitely help you.